Unless you've been living under a rock, everybody has been about and talking about AI over the past 2 to 3 years. But artificial intelligence is actually not brand new. I think it's this new era of it that's actually completely blown everybody away by storm. And today we'll be talking to Rachel, who's a tech innovator bringing AI, to biotechnology. As AI innovation lead at Clario, Rachel is shaping the future of healthcare technology. I feel like, this is something so powerful because healthcare is so important, in our world, in this country specifically, and bringing AI to power that is so important. So today, we're going to be talking to her about everything in these two spaces. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, to get us started, can you share a little bit about why you actually got, interested in AI and tech and the biotech space?
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of interesting. I never really intentionally had an interest in this particular space. I honestly kind of fell into it, and I'm very glad that I did. I was in my previous company, I was working on a project with the FDA, and that project used AI to help the FDA to streamline their drug approval process. And so through that project, which kind of I fell into that project because there was an opening, and at the time, no one kind of wanted to be involved in the project. I think everyone wasn't really hip to how big AI was going to be. People were interested, but no one really wanted to kind of volunteer. So I volunteered myself, and just really got really deep into this space and understanding the drug trial process and drug approval process, and understanding the impacts that it has on everyone on your everyday life, and just really had to do a lot of self-study and just got up to speed extremely quickly. And that's kind of how I fell into this space, and then have just kind of grown as the technology has grown, and then just really evolved in this space.
One of the things that we were talking about before we got on was like, this is completely new to me. I've never heard about, an AI innovation manager before. And I'm sure like I'm not the only one. You actually also shared that, this was brand new to you when you joined. So can you share to me and the audience, what that means in your specific role?
Yeah. So my specific role is one of those newer titles and newer roles that you're probably going to see as the AI roles evolve within organizations and companies. So I like to say that I'm a hybrid of a little bit of program management, a little bit of product management, a little bit of innovation manager, all across the board, but specifically focused on AI, and in my role, generative AI, and helping teams to understand how they can leverage AI and the power of generative AI to solve solutions or to solve business problems, and just really utilize the technology either through custom development or third-party solutions that we may acquire, or leveraging existing technology like a Microsoft Copilot even. So just really helping people to think in a very innovative or creative way, and use AI to do that.
Hmm. So in a nutshell, it's basically like figuring out what the AI landscape is, right?
Exactly.
Figuring out how you are able to integrate that into your own workflows or use cases, and
Exactly.
then basically to drive all your outcomes. Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Exactly. And then
So,
there's oftentimes where I'm working with someone, and trying to really dig into what the problem is, and really being in the problem space and not so much in the solution space. So there's been times where I've had to tell people, this isn't an AI problem, and we can't help you with this. Maybe it's a data problem. Maybe, you really need to, that's part of my role too. Sometimes is telling people, no, this is not an AI solution here.
and like I think you bring up a really, really, really good point. You actually you almost prompted my next question because when you think about NFTs or the metaverse or blockchain, all of those technologies that got us excited like 4 or 5 years ago, they haven't quite taken off, at least met the hype that they really promised to deliver on when they came onto the scene. And I think oftentimes is that we can come across like really exciting technology and everybody's excited about it, but it doesn't really solve a consumer problem or a user problem. I think you touched on a really good point. A problem can still exist, but it may not be an AI problem. So how do you have a framework for determining when to use AI or when to look for other methods of solving, these problems?
Yes, I do. That's funny you say that. Yes. So I do have a framework that I use to kind of evaluate what those issues are, or if this is a good fit for AI. So some of those things include just understanding the data. Do you have good quality data in order to help us to kind of leverage AI to solve the problem? So AI works really well with unstructured data. If you have, a huge amount of data that's unstructured and you want to kind of come to a solution to analyze that data and to get analytics around it. That's a lot of times those AI solutions that we can develop are really helpful in that space. Sometimes we will do something as like a quick POC or a proof of concept to see, hey, does AI really solve this problem? Is this something that we can really leverage? And then will the ROI support this larger initiative if we move to a larger initiative? So there are a lot of things that are kind of play into answering that question, and it's really broad, and it's very something that we really have to have a deep conversation with those end users and those stakeholders to understand.
So to go back to like how all of this started, how did you even I imagine that this isn't your first role, right? So what was your first role, in tech or maybe out of college? And how have you kind of like progressed up till this moment? What is that journey like? And I asked that question because like, you know, a lot of the people who watch this show are usually maybe like career transitioners or people looking to break into tech. So it's always good to kind of like hear that origin story.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and I do want to preface and say that I'm not a developer, I'm not a data scientist, and that's something I definitely talk to folks and encourage them. If you don't necessarily, you can get into tech without having to go into those very technical, heavy technical roles. And I started, I after college, I worked at Hertz Car Rental. I was the assistant manager there for about 2 years, and I just was not happy with where I was at and where I was going. And I was not very good at my job. So I just knew I needed to do something different. And funny, one day, as part of my role, we had to pick up customers and bring them into the office. And so I picked up a woman, and she just seemed so put together. She had come in there multiple times. She was traveling all the time. She just seemed like so sure of herself. And I was like, I want that. And so I asked her, I said, well, what do you do? And how are you able to travel? How are you doing this and that? And she said, well, I am a developer. And at that time, I had never met a female Black developer in my life. And so it was just like, wow, maybe this is something that I need to look into. And maybe I need to kind of pivot and reevaluate where I'm going. And so I did go back to school to get my master's degree. And I took some classes in development and realized that it just wasn't for me. But after talking to my counselors and things like that, I realized, yeah, I can still go into tech, but I don't have to be a coder. I don't have to be a keyboard cowboy. That's just not for me. I like that intersection between working with people and assessing problems and kind of getting down to understand what the process is. And so after I graduated, I worked at the Chicago Housing Authority. I was working in another capacity there, and I was able to transition into a tech role without any experience as a business analyst. So I started my career as a business analyst and worked in that capacity for a while, just kind of progressing through the ranks of business analyst to senior business analyst and things like that. And then I switched over into product and program management. So I was managing, programs and doing product management and things like that. And then, having worked exclusively on AI projects, it kind of allowed me to leverage into this new arena or this new era of these new AI roles and job titles.
Mm. You make a very, very interesting point, or something that I've always thought as so important. In fact, one of the questions I typically ask is like, why tech? Because it's almost like an open secret within the community, right? Just like you said, like that representation, seeing someone leaving the dream. And I think that's even why this exists, right? To bring it closer to a lot of people, to make them feel like it's actually possible. And it's like all you needed was just that moment, because once you figured out that this was something that was actually within reach, that somebody who looked like you was able to do, you were able to just go and do it, right? The unlock was just seeing the example. So for me, maybe almost like a question back to you and just your thought process or how that influenced you. Uh, why was that moment so pivotal and so important for you?
It just it's the it is extremely true that representation matters. You hear it, but I've lived it and believe it, and I just had not seen anyone like me who just kind of, I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, in a not a very wealthy area, and it always felt like there was always some sort of struggle happening. Like we were always trying to like claw and fight. And I saw my mom, working hard. I saw her going back to school at a later age. And I knew that I wanted to have something a little bit different for myself. But I just didn't know what that looked like or what that was. And I felt like after college, I was kind of grasping at straws. I took the LSAT. I thought I wanted to go to law school. I thought I wanted to then go back and be an engineer, or I wanted to be this or that, or and then just having this woman who I'd seen multiple times, it just seemed like she just knew what she wanted to do. She was extremely intelligent. She just was well put together. She was always traveling. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be in my life someday. And it just was really impactful. It was like, yeah, she can do it. And she looks like me. And she looks like, she came from where I came from. It's possible.
Mm, mm. Really, really powerful, really powerful. So, in getting this role, because again, it's an unusual job title. First time I saw it was like seeing your profile. So, how did you know that this was what you wanted to do?
I had when I was transitioning from my previous company, I knew that I wanted to stay in the tech on the AI space. I knew that I wanted to find something where I can kind of really dig deeper into the technology and understand business solutions in different arenas. I was working with the FDA. I knew that drug space. So how can I leverage that, which I already knew and which I was really enjoying doing? How can I broaden that, and how can I deepen that? And so, when I was doing my search, I kind of looked at different AI type of roles. I kind of honed in on specifically AI, and then AI, and just really kind of did a deep search into different roles that were AI specific. And it kind of led me to this one. And then and if I can just tell you a quick story, how I actually got the role was, I did a video and I like a 10-second video saying, hey, my name is Rachel Alexander, I'm really interested in the role. This is my 3-second spiel about my background. And then if you want to know more about me, please feel free to reach out. And I sent that to the recruiter after I applied. And then within a day, the recruiter got in touch with me and was like, you're fast tracked, and he was very like excited that I was using technology in order to apply for a technology role. So
I love stories. I particularly love that one because, one of the things that inadvertently happens on this, podcast is you hear unconventional strategies like yours that end up being very successful. And, I know like we're probably in the worst tech job market we've had maybe in forever, right? But even then, fortune will always favor the brave, right? It's that if everybody's doing the same thing, they'll almost always get the same result. The same result, yeah. But if you just dare to do something different, or just take a different path, or take a different route, it may not always pay off, but when it does, it pays off big. And like that's a big testament to that.
yeah,
Um,
we're all reading the same articles, we're all following the same influencers, we're all seeing the same blogs come across us. So it's like, okay, yes, we know we need to tailor our resume for every job. We know we can use Chat GPT, but then it's like, what is that extra little bit of a spice that's going to kind of put you over the top? And what does that look like? And for me, it was just happened to be, hey, let's put together this 10-second video. And I actually sent it to three recruiters for three different positions, and two of them did reach out to me. One of them did not, but the other two did. So that's all it took.
And I think it matters, even deconstructing it, right? Like how genius it is because you're living in this era of like fake candidates and fake roles and like, the whole overseas like countries having like entire operations to send people to get jobs in the US and things like that. So I think adding personality because ultimately like there's everything else, you
Mhm.
know, that you can do. You can use ChatGPT to put all the keywords and all this and all that.
Yeah.
But I think having a bit of personality in a way that can be faked, that's so original to you. I think that goes a long way. Maybe some people will say that's not for me,
Yeah.
but for the people that's for, I think it will go a long way. Just like your experiment, right? Two out of three. What's that? Like a 67% conversion rate.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like those odds, right?
Yeah, those are really great odds. So, for anyone looking to start a role in AI or just really fascinated about this space, what are some of the career paths? As someone who, as an AI innovation manager, what are the other like pathways that you see, for people who are just trying to get into the role industry?
And that's interesting that you asked because in my previous role, I had quite a few direct reports. I was a hiring manager. I hired data scientists. I hired, Scrum masters and things like that. So I would say for me, one of the biggest things that I would say is that traditional education is not the end all be all anymore. If I find someone who has a strong portfolio, who has a certification, who has put in, they have their projects on Git and they're really, putting thought leadership out there, I don't know if you should say this, but I look at people's LinkedIn, and if you've written an article and that article is really interesting, hey man, this might be somebody who I would want on my team, or somebody that I want to kind of interact with and engage with. So those types of things are things that are that we're kind of looking for. So as far as roles, there are a lot of the traditional roles with the word AI kind of put in front of it. So maybe AI business analyst or AI product owner or, AI engineer, and those types of things. So those are things that you can kind of search for is just AI, and everything will kind of pop up and then you can kind of filter. And I'm a firm believer also of kind of like targeting industries. So for me, I knew that I wanted to continue in this clinical space. I wanted to continue in this biotech space. So I was putting my best foot forward for those particular companies and those specific industries. So looking in those, that helped me a lot. It was like, okay, I know I want to be in this biotech space. I want to be in the clinical space. What are the top 20 companies, and search intentionally within those companies for AI roles, and then sign up for alerts and make sure that I'm one of the first people that's applying when that comes through. So just really kind of targeting those things. And you do see some prompt engineering, but honestly, that is going to start going away. I really feel that is going to start going away, as you see with how ChatGPT now is being. It has the ability to kind of think a little bit more intentionally and things like that. I feel like prompt engineering is going to go away as a title, but there are some prompt engineering roles. So just getting those certifications and then leveraging that into to different opportunities is really key.
Yeah, that's a really loaded answer. Thank you. So just to break it out again, guys, I think number one, I think she answered this the first time, is finding strategies or creating opportunities for yourself outside of the traditional opportunity. So is it sending a video? Is it doing like specific outreach? Just make sure that you're being authentic and like finding creative ways to reach people. I think just like you said, it's not always about traditional education. What can you teach yourself? What are you willing to learn? And one of the beautiful things that I see with a lot of career switchers is that oftentimes you're not coming from zero, right? It's either like you've worked in like retail or fast food or something of that nature. Those same industries have corporate roles, they have tech roles. So if you bring your experience, even with that limited tech knowledge, you can be better than someone who's just all tech, but none of that actual industry knowledge. And that's very key, right? So I think bringing all of those aspects together is very, very important. So go ahead. Sorry, I think you were going to say something.
No, no, sorry. I was going to just really expand on your point. I think that's a great point because, when I was looking to fill roles, one of the biggest things is like for this particular role is the experience, someone with 10 years experience, in a particular role that has nothing to do with this industry versus someone who may have 4 years of experience but has had more years within this industry. You're kind of weighing both of those, and it's very role specific, so I wouldn't get discouraged if I was transitioning and trying to apply. And then I also want to just really reiterate that what you just said is so key. That's how I kind of got my first role in tech. Is I had no experience, and I constantly was in our IT department. They thought I worked there because I was there so much, just hanging out. What are you working on? Do you need a SME? I can work, oh, I did this, making work, honestly, making assignments for myself is one of the things that I did, it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And I created this little portfolio. Would you take a look at it? Someone in the IT department, and they were okay, cool, yeah. So and then when a role became available and I applied, I was one of the people that they thought about because we see you all the time. We've seen things that you've worked on. You volunteered to be SME. You've been a SME on all these other projects. So we know the value of what you can do. You may not have the background that we were fully looking for, but let's really consider this person. So I would definitely say you can also just really start internally with your existing company and make yourself known to the IT department, make yourself known to the people in that department so that they can think about you when those opportunities become available.
You know why this is so valid is because like you're literally the second person saying this. One of the guests literally got her first job by basically helping test out new technology and being
Yeah.
best friends with people in tech. So there's a lot of like opportunity even in current spaces, and I think one of the things that I think people underrate, because maybe the world doesn't necessarily work that way, right? But I think that's one of the things that I actually love about technology is that curiosity will get you a lot of things in tech because that's usually like, first of all, this is how a lot of the tech that runs the world today is built. It's through curiosity. And I think there's always a recognition of that once you start to show that, it brings people to your side essentially. And like you engaging in the way that you do, because ultimately it's like I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it. Like many of the things that you could be a AI product manager even today, and go to a new role and have to learn something completely different. You can leverage your existing knowledge, but
Yeah.
more of the things that you do might be completely brand new. So I think even that willingness to learn then becomes an asset in itself, right? That when people can see it, and it might be harder to show, right? When you have a resume that says nothing about the role, but when you can show to the people day to day that
Yeah.
I'm actually really curious, it
Yeah.
helps you skip so many steps. You know,
Yes.
I've if I'm thinking now about like the entire podcast, we probably had like 5 or 6 people who've transitioned from non-technical roles in the company to actually technical roles or tech roles, maybe not necessarily technical. So it's like that's a major key right there. So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I agree. It is such a underrated skill is just curiosity. It is.
So as someone who's also not just gotten hired in tech, but hired people too, for people who are coming in, green, if I should say that, what are some of the things that can help stand someone out? Of course, being bold is one of them, like you said, or thinking outside the box. But what are like some of the things that, skills that people can build to get to that point where someone effectively takes a chance on them?
Yeah, I know. A lot of it is just definitely self-study. If you don't have an opportunity to work on projects, I would say create your own projects. There are a lot of opportunities out there for people to volunteer with data analysis. There's a lot of open data sets. One of the things I worked on in my previous company was working with the FDA to make data sets available to anyone, the public. You can download those data sets and create a project around analyzing it. There's a lot of opportunities for freelancers to annotate data. It's as simple as drawing a box around a car so that you can identify the car in 500 or 5,000 images, and that's something that's solid background that you can put on your resume because you understand the process. So I would say if there's not an opportunity for you to actually have worked in AI, just creating opportunities for yourself to leverage those skills. So learn Python, learn how to analyze data, learn what the structures and what the architecture and what the tech stack looks like, and being able to kind of understand and name it. And right now there's so many free resources on I work a lot in generative AI. There's so many generative AI courses that you can take for free. Google has one. There's a ton of universities have started putting their content on YouTube that you can kind of really leverage. And so take those things, create your own projects, and then just show that, maybe I don't have that traditional background or that skill set, but I do understand the industry. I do understand how to use these things. And these are the projects that I've created for myself. And sometimes that holds a little bit more weight because now I see, hey, this person is a hard worker. This person is going to go that extra mile to learn these things. So I would really encourage people to just kind of take that path and kind of make your own path.
That's really, really cool. And I made a video yesterday about resumes, right? So what's a good resume? There's a lot of like controversial opinions either way. I do have my thoughts, but I definitely want to hear from you.
It's really hard to say. I know there's some standard things that you want to say, but I truly believe it's subjective. It really is. Because I've talked to other people about the same thing about what they like in a resume. I personally don't like overly wordy resumes because I remember the companies that I've worked for have been remote. So those remote roles, literally within hours of posting a position, you have 200, 300, 400 resumes that come in. Now, whether they're good quality resumes or they're legit resumes, not 100% sure, but you are, as a hiring manager, going through hundreds of resumes. So for me, sometimes it is a quick scan. Sometimes it is, what are the high points? How many of those keywords that I'm personally looking for that I know that I need on my team appear in there? And so for me, I just don't like those dense, overly wordy resumes. And a lot of people are steering towards that because they're going to ChatGPT and they're putting in it and it's spitting out this long, detailed description of each of your roles. And I don't feel like you necessarily need that.
So aside from like very dense or heavily worded, like let's say resume bullets, are there other things that, maybe don'ts that people should watch out for that may be working against them?
That is a great question. I would say not providing actual kind of proof of things that you've actually done, meaning what did you do? Quantify what you have done, right? I've saved the company X million of dollars, or I implemented, I had an accuracy rate of 89%, I was responsible for 60% of the builds, or, whatever those things look like. I love to see that. Those things are really, really, really great little nuggets to include in the resume. And I think they're extremely helpful. And I feel like a lot of times, again, I'm going back to that dense resume, that they're just spitting it out from whatever ChatGPT is providing. And it's not really, quantitative on how you actually provided value.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can agree with that because one of the things I recently was helping out a friend and I critiqued, the resume because, many of the things that were listed on the resume almost felt like, someone took tasks of like a job listing and just put it on a, and I'm like, that's just a no, right? Like,
Yeah.
because ultimately, one, I think the biggest thing that a lot of people don't recognize is not even that you're not showing impact. Of course, that's a negative, but it's almost like there's also no personality. And I think
Mm.
it's funny that we're having this conversation in the world of AI, is that if anything about you is something that I could take and literally substitute with anything else, then why should it be you? Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, I kind of did in school right now. I'm doing a writing class, and that's one of the things that I've seen. It's that people tend to use a lot of like words, optimize this, that,
Mhm.
and all of this catchphrases that we all like. But I think it almost always misses the point. Where
Yeah.
it's like if there's a way to maybe like shorten and write a really good story in a resume bullet that really touches on, for example, like an experience hiring someone to the team or
Yeah.
delivering something specifically within a project. I think it more often than not, you know, brings something extra to where now they can see a person, and almost like what you said, like going to someone's LinkedIn and saying, I like this person's thought process is someone I want on my team.
Mhm.
I think a resume can also do that. And I think maybe more or less about frameworks, but it's just like being able to show with even those limited resume bullets, what value we're able to deliver. I think that was definitely something. And then, of course, like not including certain information, like someone who's been in the role for quite some time, maybe like had like maybe 5 to 6 roles,
Oh,
still having like school level projects on the resume.
yeah.
That's a no-no,
Yes. Yeah,
because
definitely.
so it's kind
Yeah.
of like those little
Yeah.
things. and and
Yeah.
and this is the thing why even though you might have a stellar resume, and just that little thing might
Mhm.
break it out, because people will say things like, I pay attention to detail. But
Yes.
I'm like, you can't pay that much attention to detail if
If that's yeah.
your project from like 8 years ago
Yeah,
is still
exactly.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I say to seasoned people. Sometimes I do a little bit of mentoring, and one of the things that I would say for us seasoned people, it's okay to leave things off the resume. If it's your first job out of college, and you don't necessarily have to put that on there. It's okay to drop a few things off, and those types of things. So, and then I just want to touch back on a point that you were talking about with the resumes. One of the things that you have to remember about AI is the mean. AI is always going to get you the mean. So it's going to produce you that center point, right? So it's not, so what you need to do is to be an outlier. You need to be on the opposite end. It's going to get you to that center or that middle ground. But in order for you to excel, you have to take it that extra step. So, that's just something to kind of remember.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think another controversial take that I have is that everyone should know how to write a resume, and like you shouldn't outsource it to someone else. But we already have too many hot takes tonight.
You're going to get a lot of emails and ads.
So, networking is something that's so key. I think we've talked about this, right? Like how personality is a big thing, whether it's building your LinkedIn, even in your resume, and like even your origin story, right? It's seeing someone who resonated with you and like doing that. How important has networking been in your career so far?
Networking has been really important. And early in my career, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I didn't call it that. I was just making friends and trying and being curious. What is this person doing? One of the best pieces of advice that I got early in my career was from one of my managers, and she said, "You should always be, looking at what the next role is." So, if I'm a junior role, I should be looking at different listings for a senior role or for a director role. And I should be networking with people in my company or talking to people in my company that are in that role to say, hey, this is essentially the blueprint of what I need to follow and what I need to do in the next couple of years in order to move up to that next level. So for me, I don't do it in a self-serving way. It's just out of pure curiosity. Like, okay, so what is this person doing? And what is their story? And how did they get to this next level? So for me, networking internally is really important. And then, just kind of having someone to kind of almost commiserate with sometimes is really good. Having someone who has been in those same meetings, who's had those same troubles, who've had those same complaints, is just really important to have someone to kind of share those things with and those experiences with. So networking is very, very important.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And there's something that you said that really resonated because, a senior leader at my company's literally said something like that recently, which is like, you want to always keep your vision for the next two roles that you want to be in. And
Yes.
he said that specifically because even the next role you take can take you on a detour from that one, right? So
Oh,
the
for sure.
reason why it's good to look to ahead is, let's say, for example, you're trying to be in an AI role and like you're currently in data. When you look at that next opportunity, does it get you closer or does it get you farther? Because
Yeah.
if you look at it in isolation, the next role might be great,
Yeah.
but is it great in the context of, because ultimately, like, you're not going to get to that role and say, oh, you know what, this is where I give up. You're always going to be thinking about what's next. So it's better to just factor that in so that as you're considering opportunities. So yeah, I think that definitely resonates. Yeah, for sure.
No, that makes
So
sense.
go ahead, sorry.
No, no, I was just agreeing with what you're saying 100%. Yeah, it is very useful. Yeah, helpful.
So when we talk about like skill sets, because it's fascinating to me, right? Like you talk about being in the intersection of like, in your current role, a program manager, a product manager, an innovation manager. You've also being a business analyst. What are some of the skill sets, right, that kind of like are maybe, I don't want to say the same, but that kind of like feature along those different roles, and how were you able to develop those skills?
I would say the kind of thread that has kind of really, I can trace throughout all of my roles and different companies that I've worked with is just that ability to kind of listen and listen with the ability to kind of pull out and understand what a pain point is or what a problem is and really focus in and allow my stakeholders or SMEs to really kind of tell me, hey, this is what I'm going through, and really be empathetic to what their pain points are and trying to pull out just kind of getting down to that point. I really want to listen for what the problem is and getting people out of the space of trying to create a solution. So that's always something that has really kind of been a thread throughout my career, whether, if I'm a leader and I'm leading a team of people and I'm working with those teams of individuals, it's okay. If you have a problem or if you have an issue, I'm being empathetic to listen to that, to figure out how we can solve that. Same thing with implementing an AI solution. Okay, what is the problem that we're trying to really solve here? And then evaluating whether the AI can then solve that, or if I need to steer you down a different path. So just really having listening and just really drawing out those issues and those problems and those pain points.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really, really, really resonates because I think you've said it twice, and I'm gonna like dig deeper into it now with my next question. But first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who's been joining us tonight, listening. Uh, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. Leave a like, subscribe wherever you're watching, and drop some emojis in the chat. I've definitely gotten a lot of value from Rachel. I'm sure you have too. So show some love. One of the things that people talk about kind of like in this product space is like product sense. And I think something that's very closely tied to that is having that problem focus
Mhm.
versus like a solution focus.
Yes.
Can you talk? I know you've mentioned it twice, so I definitely want to dig deep. Why is it important, for someone who doesn't really understand that? Why is it important to have more of a problem focus versus a solution focus? Because a problem's not supposed to be like a bad thing.
No, problems are a great thing. I think one of the things, and it's funny, I actually just had this issue a couple weeks ago with a stakeholder who, came in to talk to me to say, hey, we want to build this solution that does X, Y, and Z. So, but the question is, okay, so what is the problem? Is the problem, I like to use the example of, okay, maybe the problem is that you're thirsty, but you're coming in to tell me that we need to buy a cow. That doesn't get me to what what the right solution is for you. Maybe half the team is lactose intolerant. I don't know. Like, that's not going to get you to where you need to be. You need to be able to free put the weight back onto us as the technical team to come up with a solution, to think about all the different angles, and you just tell us what the problem is. You tell us what your current process is, and maybe we can help. Maybe the solution is not what you thought it was. Maybe it's something that's upstream. Maybe it's multiple things. Maybe it's your process for inputting data is completely backwards. I would say that, but like thinking like that. So just understanding that it frees up those people who are not technical from trying to think in a technical mindset, because you may not have that experience and that understanding to think about all of the different things that go into building the solution. Maybe you haven't thought about the ROI. And then also it just, it allows for to create a more focused solution that people are actually going to use. I've worked on projects before in the past where we've built things and they were not used because maybe this came from one person who said, let's build this, but it ultimately didn't solve the pain point downstream. So allowing people to kind of think about what the problem is just allows a lot more flow of creativity, allows more flow of innovation, allows more focus for the technical team to really come and hone in and say, let's build it this way so our hands aren't tied too. So
That is I really like that thirst and cow analogy. That's a really good one. You know, um, if I could just maybe follow up on that. So, what are some of the ways, for someone, because product is one of the roles that everybody's excited about. Everybody wants to be a product, but it's not as easy or straightforward, many times, uh, as a lot of people seem to think about. So if we go with this, like, problem and solution idea, how do we? What's a good way to think about, you know, solving for some of these challenges that a new product manager might come across?
That is a great question. I believe in being extremely collaborative, right? So I'm not going to, if I have a discovery session with someone to kind of sit down and kind of really dig into what is your issue, what is going on, I'm not going to take that information back and sit and try to think about what do we do? How do we solve this? What's the solution? It should be collaborative. I'm pulling in my tech lead. I'm pulling in my data scientist. I'm pulling in my UX designer. I'm pulling in all of these people and I'm presenting to them what the problem is. And then we're going to work together and brainstorm and understand, hey, what are our potential options? Some things I can easily say, yeah, this is definitely not an AI solution, or there are some things that are more complex. And I feel like for younger product people, they feel like they have to put the weight of the world on their shoulders when they don't need to. They should be collaborative. They should be talking to their data engineer or whomever it is and getting understanding what it is that we're trying to do, what's the best approach. But also you have the end user and the stakeholder in mind, but you also need to validate. You also need to be collaborative. You also need to kind of spread some of that struggle around so that they can help to alleviate the pain and steer you in a more creative solution. So
Mm. And kind of like taking it towards the end of that, because, like, one of the one of the reasons why product is so challenging, or can be challenging at times, it's that end to end, or what people will call that product development lifecycle. So of course we hear the problem, we come together to try to find a solution, we work on a solution, and then we deliver it to the customer, right? But sometimes what the customer asked for and what we delivered is not the same thing.
yeah,
Or sometimes, I think one of the famous, quotes, I don't know if it's thought about like as a product quote, but to me it is, when Henry Ford said, if I'd ask people what they want, they would just ask for faster horses, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes even the customer doesn't know what they want.
Yeah.
So on the delivery side, how do you deliver products that don't just only meet the user's expectation, but sometimes exceeds it?
Yeah. And then I do trace it back again to what is the problem statement. Like you said, if you ask them what they want, you're going to get what they think they want, right? They're not going to get what they actually need. So you definitely want to start with that problem statement. And then one of the things that we really believe in my particular company is that those proof of concepts. We're always pushing out, or MVPs, or however it's defined, but those small chunks of work, so that we know that we're on the right track. We're testing, you're allowing you to use it, we're allowing you to kind of play around with it and giving you different options, and to understand, hey, does this solve my problem? Is this addressing my pain point? Is this on the right path of what I was thinking? Because sometimes I've been in this industry for a long time too, so I understand that happens. Someone says, I want this. You take them through the whole journey, you show them mock-ups, and then when they get in and they start playing with it, they're like, no, this is not at all what I want. And you're just like, but this is what you told me, so so building those early small POCs and getting people a taste of what they're doing and building it, and not overcommitting, honestly, to build out a whole tool. It can get really frustrating, honestly.
That is so true. And when you were saying that, it almost makes me reminds me of like, two games, right? One of them was like Minecraft, and the other was like, Cyberpunk 77. Minecraft was in the beta for like maybe 4 years,
Yes.
and like they just kept testing, getting the users in, using it, enjoying it, iterating on it and making it better. Whereas Cyberpunk was like this high budget, lot of hype, flopped on arrival.
Oh my God.
Even though the game did recover and they patched all the errors,
Yeah.
it just never like fully recovered in people's minds because the hype level was here, but the game delivery and expectation was like way, underwater. And like they could never just buy back, users' trust because
Yeah.
they'd asked for a lot of it and got it, but they never repaid it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't buy back that trust once you lose it. And then if you're in a company and you're working, you get a reputation, honestly, as a team that can't deliver, and it it's very hard to recover from.
Yeah. Quick shout out to Christy. She says, great interview. Loved hearing Rachel's story, growth tips, and knowledge base. Yeah, I said it. A lot of gems, a lot of amazing, uh, you know, tips and knowledge that she's sharing here. I think it's definitely going to be very, very useful. Definitely has been useful to me. And I hope that, for everybody watching live and even people who are going to be watching the replay, you feel the exact same way. So, in terms of like your career, like, do you have some like guiding principles or philosophies that you go by? Just how you approach it, how you decide on, how to make that next move, etc. Because I think you had mentioned something about, when you were at your last company, when you were thinking about the next role, how you were viewing it. Do you have some kind of like format or guidelines that you use in making those type of decisions?
Yeah, it's funny. I already know what I want my next role to be. I already know. And I've started trying to dig into what skill sets do I need to build in order to kind of achieve that. And so that's something that I'm working towards and working in. And then for me, one of the biggest things, if you've never read the book Five Agreements, I would definitely say that's one of the ones that you should read. That's one of my guiding principles. Of course, don't take anything personally. Is I did that a lot early in my career. I remember crying because someone told me they didn't like what I built, or my requirements were terrible. I missed something, and I just took everything so personal. So it's just like, yeah, reading that book really kind of focused me in a different way, and it's so useful on so many different levels. So yeah, I feel like looking at what I want to do. And then I am someone who, I don't know if my managers either love me or hate me, because I'm the kind of person that's like, this is what I want to do. This is my plan. This is where I want to go. I've already told my current manager I want to start building. I want to start using Python to work on projects. And he's just like, okay, go for it, you know. So it's just, I kind of steer the conversation in, and have always been like that. It's like, okay, these are the 10 things that I want to accomplish in the next 2 years. So,
It was so funny, when you said that piece about just figuring out, that next step, or how you want to approach it, because I think that that's something that, while it's all kind of like having that balance between delivering in the moment and also like
oh,
having that step forward, because I think that's definitely one way to not get caught up, or not necessarily miss the moment or miss the opportunity, just constantly like thinking forward to the next thing.
oh yeah.
So again, I just want to say, if you have any questions for Rachel about, product management, being an innovation manager,
Mhm.
AI in general, I think she's already answered a ton. So we have a few more minutes. Please feel free to leave them in the chat. But in the meantime, money is always something that people are always very excited about.
Yeah.
Um, I know, like, and this is a very niche role, so I don't know how much data there's out there, but what does uh, earning potential look like, for an AI innovation manager?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like you said, it is a niche role, but if we're looking at roles, if you're looking at AI product manager, AI program manager, those roles range from like the 130s up to like the 175, those types of salary ranges. And I've been very fortunate. I did, like I said, I started out as a assistant manager at Hertz. I think I was making about $28,000 a year, plus commissions, which I got none because I was terrible at my job. So that I was making about 28,000, and now I've kind of progressed into that range that I've talked about before. So it's definitely been a journey. And I've been in my career for about 10 plus years now. So I would say that would be on the higher end. But some of the starting salaries that I've been seeing in AI and have hired for around the 75 to 85 mark. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of really great ways to kind of turn your life around, I would say. A great opportunities for doing that. And I want to just also say that I've seen a lot of swell of people being directed to go into project management, and nothing against project management, and I think it's a very valuable and valid career path. But I will also challenge people to think outside of just thinking that project management is the only way to get those 100K salaries and the only way to get into tech in a kind of non development type of role, because there's so many other opportunities out there that are not as kind of flooded as a project management. So I would say keep your eyes open, look into those things, and just really just keep your options open.
That is so valid, because there's something that I'm also kind of like taking economics at this point. So, demand and supply, people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You definitely don't want to go into an overly competitive market. It's
Yes.
not wise. But I think beyond that, there's a framework that Chanel shared on the podcast that I thought was very useful, is finding that intersection between what you're really good at and where the opportunity is. Because
Mhm.
even if you do end up where it's saturated, because you're going to be such a good skill match, it may not make a difference so much. But
Mhm.
where it's like a double whammy is to go into a space that's already overly saturated, and you're
Mhm.
not even, naturally gifted, right, to
Yes.
do that
Yeah.
role. I think that's even where it's more challenging. So yes, definitely look for opportunities in areas where there's a lot of opportunity. Maybe less people know about it than not,
Mhm.
which just means that like you're gonna get a lot of opportunity. I think this literally happened during COVID. Companies
Yeah.
were hiring so many people.
Yes.
If you could sneeze JavaScript, you get hired on the spot, right?
Yes.
So you definitely want to be going towards where there's demand because it just increases your chances of being lucky.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely very valid.
Yeah, I agree. And not to say, because I actually has started, one of my friends and I, we've actually started a company. It's called Portfolio Pro, where we're helping, those program managers or project managers to create an AI based portfolio. So, if you
Mm,
connect with me on LinkedIn, you can find some information about that. But I do think it is a valid career path, but I just feel like there are a lot of other opportunities out there that through your podcast, people are able to learn about. And, I've gone down the rabbit hole of just watching all these interviews and just getting all these nuggets and like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. So, yeah.
yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. And not like that's I'm everything that I said was actually in agreement with you, right? Because it's ultimately like, you know, I think like again with technology, one of the things that helps us do is like work smarter, not harder. And like I
Yes.
think advice like that because in fact that for me is one of the biggest disservice. Like it's great that people are getting drawn into tech because again one of the things that we talked about in the beginning is people not knowing. But
Yes.
just how you went into tech, you got you know it was a developer who drew your attention to tech and you did try that but you were able to quickly refocus to the things that were specifically geared towards you, right? So definitely, and that's why I meant like don't go where it's overly saturated, definitely if you can, but if that's what you're qualified for, but make sure it is what you're qualified for because
Yes.
by default, if it's already saturated, you're gonna have to work harder
Yes.
than it's not. Like if you're a really good developer today, even in this tight job market, you're gonna have better chances than
Yeah.
a project manager because why? It's a shorter ramp, for people to become a product manager, a project manager, than to become an engineer. So at that very top level, there's just gonna be a lot less competition,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, for
So
sure.
it's the same principle.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And we were actually gonna get to that point where you could promote, but definitely I want to talk about it. So tell me a little bit about your program, what it does, who it's geared towards, and if people are interested, how they can get in touch.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I kind of like
No, 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 it's perfect.
yeah, no. So the our application is called PM Portfolio Pro, and so it is just working with a number of individuals, mentoring people into getting into tech. Is just seeing that market is very competitive around project management. So allowing individuals who either don't have the technical or who don't have that experience on the job experience to use an AI tool that allow them to build out a portfolio, work through an actual project that's simulated using AI. Or if you're a seasoned program or project manager or program manager, you can build out your portfolio and include a history of your work and create AI focused examples and get rated through the tool using our tools. So yeah, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I can definitely, you'll see a link to that particular page. We're actually getting ready to go into beta testing, and we would love to connect with individuals who are interested in testing it out and learning more.
Absolutely, absolutely. So get in touch. We're gonna leave your LinkedIn details in the comments. So for anybody who's interested in getting in touch, I think that that's actually one of the things that I've always wondered a little bit more about. Like, what does a PM portfolio look like? What kind of information goes on there? Maybe you can help me, better understand that.
Yeah, definitely. So, as far as a PM portfolio, one of the things that you want to include is, just the types of project that you've worked on. You want to include a lot more detailed information that you can put into a resume. So, in the resume, you are going to put, your jobs that you've had, the impacts that you've made, but within a specific portfolio using the AI focused tool, you're able to create AI artifacts that are then rated and that'll tell you, hey, this person has been able to create a charter and they've rated this charter at a 98%. And, you can show that, hey, I'm at the top of the class of, creating these specific artifacts. And then you can also track all of your kind of work history and things like that within the actual tool itself to create a custom portfolio that kind of shows more detail about your work in the projects that you've worked on. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we have a one of your friends here. Say. Sorry, I'm late. I was clicking the wrong link. Hey, we're still happy that you were able to join.
Yes.
So again, as we kind of like go to wrap up, what are some advice that you would you would give anyone trying to, start a career in tech, start a career in AI, or start a career as an innovation manager? And before you answer that, sorry, you already did miss everything. But the good thing is, it's going to be available on the channel for replay, so please check it out. But yeah, what advice would you give anyone trying to break into tech?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, don't get discouraged. Hearing all the stories and seeing the number of people that apply to those positions. I think if you can position yourself as, like you said, having that personality, having a unique skill set to offer, I think you will do a lot better than a lot of individuals. And I would say, also, the traditional path is not necessarily one that you have to take. Certifications, showing portfolio, showing work that you've done, and being able to speak to those things when you do get a call back, when you do get an interview. I didn't even get to go through some of the crazy interviews that I have conducted. So maybe another time, but being prepared to be able to speak intelligently about the industry and your work history. I would also say, just first, I would really encourage people to pivot internally. So if you're already with a company, if you're with a Fortune 500 company, or if you're with a small company and they have an IT department and someone is working on things that you are interested in or that you want to pivot to, start going and tapping on doors and tapping on shoulders and seeing how you can get integrated in those projects. Is either a SME, or if it's AI and you just want to do data validation and help with that and cleaning data, there's people that are always looking for that. And for you to go in and volunteer to do that is a huge plus. I would definitely say that. And then I would also, as we talked about earlier, read the 5 agreements, learn not to take things personally, and just really just kind of stay focused, and you'll get there. It'll happen. If it happened for me, and I was at a point in my life where I just felt like nothing was ever going to happen, and it did. And I'm so grateful to be on this path and this journey, and I love every minute of it.
Absolutely. And I know that we're a little over time, but I do want to hear that tea. We just have a little more time for that, for some of those interview stories. Because I think, that's one of the hardest parts, right? If you've got the skills, you put it in a resume, you finally get those moments. I think interviewing is definitely one of those things that could be a roadblock. So maybe you might, as the last tip, things for people to watch out for, maybe potentially a story to end it.
Yes, I would say always turn it back to what you've done, right? And how you made an impact, right? If it's even from your intro, I always encourage people to be a 3-word wonder. So that's, if someone says the intro, hey, tell us about yourself, I want you to give me, when you're doing that in your interview, give 3 words. I'm resourceful, I am curious, and I'm doing this, and then back up those 3 words. And now when I leave that interview, I'm going to remember those 3 words, because you have told me what they are that describe you in a positive way. You've told me the impact that you've made around those 3 words. Why are you resourceful? Because I was able to, get sales. I was able to turn this client into this. I was able to turn this project around. I was able to do this. And I've done that in an interview, and literally I've done that, and the interview stops and they're like, wow, I never had this before. I'm writing this down. This is great. I would also say, know your industry, know your terminology. I can forgive nerves. Everyone's nervous. I'm nervous interviewing. You're nervous being the person that's being interviewed, but you can't forgive not knowing the industry, or knowing your history, or knowing, like knowing your own job history. If I'm asking you a question about a specific role or something that appears on your resume, If you completely don't know anything about it, to me, that's a red flag, unfortunately. And then also, do not speak badly about your previous employers. I don't care if it was the worst place in the world, and they did you wrong. Do not tell me about it. This is not a therapy session. I've had people that, why did you leave your last position? And my boss was this, and he said that, and my coworkers were nosy, and she ate my lunch. And so it's just like, okay, I know what kind of person I'm going to be working with. So no, thank you, So yeah.
That is such a great way to land it. And yeah, that's so that last bit, it's almost like 101, but I think it's very
It
important to
is.
reiterate it exactly because what might be like common knowledge to you and I may not be for a lot of people. And
Exactly.
I know like um people talk about bringing your original self, but within limit.
Yes. Yes. Within limit. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel. This has been such an amazing conversation. Thanks everyone in the chat. Awakening a Prophetic Generation, Tate Pogwell, Rogwell, and Christy. Really appreciate you joining us and everyone else. Uh, this is, the show for tonight. Thanks again, Rachel. I think this has been absolutely impactful. I've definitely learned a ton. And yeah, don't forget to check out, reach out to us via LinkedIn if you want to know more about how to build your portfolio as a PM. This is the show for tonight once again, and we'll see you next Thursday with another episode of Working in Tech. Have a good night.
Thank you.